Kia ora, Mr Speaker. Kia tātou hoki huri noi tō tātou whare. I'm pleased to stand and take a call on the Trans-Tasman Proceedings Bill. As previous speakers have noted, or at least as I would like to characterise it, is that what this bill does is put into civil and technical jurisprudential language the common sense relationship that New Zealand is interested in securing and stabilising and sustaining with Australia. We have long been committed to a single economic market between our two countries. In fact, it was also the subject of our Prime Minister's State of the Nation address earlier this year, and has continued to be characterised by a number of pieces of legislation and work that our national-led government is doing. So the Trans-Tasman relationship is extremely important to New Zealand in many dimensions, and what this bill does is place on a very sound and comprehensive platform the civil jurisdiction between our two countries. It enhances international legal cooperation, which is a vital part of the government's broader economic agenda, because, as we all know, businesses require certainty in the way that they carry out their business, and the role that the law and civil jurisdiction plays in that is a critical part of that certainty. And this bill, as speakers have discussed, provides that. Australia is often the first stop for New Zealand businesses looking to expand offshore and to develop overseas markets, but getting to grips with different federal and state legislatures can be rather complex and difficult. And what this bill provides, of course, is that we have one seamless set of rules that allow businesses, whether they are geographically located here in New Zealand or in Australia, to be able to be confident that they understand what their liabilities are, but also what remedies might be available to them in the conduct of their business. It's an important step towards closer cooperation and integration of the Australian and New Zealand civil justice systems, and it enhances the legal cooperation between our two countries. It shows that we have greater confidence in each other, not just at a business level, but also in terms of the judicial and regulatory institutions that operate between our two countries. Mr Bridges spoke about his example of someone who flees their responsibilities here in New Zealand and who in the past have been able to seek protection, if you like, if not invisibility, by relocating themselves to Australia. So at that particular level of criminal malfeasance, that will no longer be possible, at least in the civil sense. My colleague Te Uriro Flavel talked about the many, many Māori who have relocated to Australia and who have set up successful businesses, and one often wishes they would come home and contribute that business now that they've now established here in New Zealand. But what this bill does also is provide a platform to ensure that those businesses continue to flourish, and that the crossing the Tasman relationship that goes on every day as Māori seek to cement and continue their whakapapa ties with New Zealand are supported by this legislative context as well. So there will now no longer be any possibility of avoidance between our two jurisdictions of Australia and New Zealand, and this gives comfort not only to businesses but to travellers on both sides of the Tasman. Since the Australia-New Zealand Closer Economic Relations Trade Agreement was signed 26 years ago, when many of us in the House were but 5 or 6 years old. No, but since they were signed 26 years ago, there have been... Obviously, I was not able to get that one past my colleague Te Uriro Flavel, but the rest of the House seems to agree on the lack of ageing amongst many of us here. Since the ER was signed a generation ago, many other steps have been put in place to secure the relationship between Australia and New Zealand, and today's Trans-Tasman Proceedings bill is yet another example of that. So there's been good progress on the single economic market between Australia and New Zealand. We've worked towards a single cross-border insolvency proceeding. We are making good progress in that. Another key area is progress on the alignment of accounting standards for profit entities, the establishment of an accounting and auditing standard setting infrastructure that will mirror those in Australia. So not only will we have happy legal fraternity, but we will also have an equally happy accountancy fraternity as they see these significant pieces of legislation bedded down in the relationship between New Zealand and Australia. Another key area is the potential for mutual recognition of auditors and financial advisors. And so, as we can see, we are steadily and incrementally putting in place a strong foundation for professional relationships between Australia and New Zealand, and the Trans-Tasman Proceedings bill is yet another example of that. So, Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House. Kia ora.